Streaming, start recording. Go live. All right, well, good morning. Welcome into Prudes Creek Missionary Baptist Church, and hope you're having a blessed Sunday so far. Hope whatever day you watch this is blessed. Excuse me for a second. I always forget to turn down my notifications. And it's hard to do this when the this thing. There There we go. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Oh, gotta love this raw live stuff, huh? All right, so welcome in and happy Sunday. First things first, we need to address prayers for sure. We need to be in prayer for Mr. Bobby, Miss Joy. They are under the weather today. Certainly pray for speedy recovery, that they get over whatever the bug is that they have. And we also need to be in prayer for Adam Montgomery, Brother Adam, pastor over at Reno Baptist. His wife has gone on to be with the Lord, which is not the outcome many of us wanted, but it's what God has seen fit to do. And we hope and pray that the lives that are touched through the donation of our organs are able to be blessed by God and be a blessing to others. And that's, I mean, Adam has already shared that on his Facebook page. So I'm not saying anything that's, not supposed to be said right now, but be in prayer for them. Be in prayer for, again, Adam, his children, and his church over there at Reno Baptist as they deal with the homegoing of Miss Amanda. It's always tough when you deal with something like that. And, it's, as Adam said, she's gone on to be with the Lord. No doubt about that. No question as to where she is now after she's passed from this plane of existence. But that's still difficult and tough to deal with, especially someone so young. And, so let's just pray that God will give them the peace that they need, and that, according to God, it surpasses all understanding as we struggle. There we go. Microphone's back now. Sorry. Gotta love technology. Sort of. It's like a love-hate relationship. Technology is going to move forward whether we do or don't. But regardless of what technology does, God is always the same. He's the same yesterday, today, tomorrow. We're going to continue on in the book of Isaiah, looking at Isaiah chapter 32 today. And, as I've said before, especially at the beginning of this series through the book of Isaiah, we need to always be sober-minded about prophecy. We need to be sober-minded about things of God, period. It's refreshing to see Brother Adam over there having a sober-minded approach. Doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt him, doesn't mean he's not grieving the loss of his wife, but he sees God through the whole thing, and focusing on God helps him to be sober-minded about the whole entire situation. And as we approach the Bible as a whole, it's so easy for us to get caught up in emotions. It's so easy for us to lose sight of what God's doing, God's ultimate plan, because we get caught up in our own wants, in our own desires. And it's just so easy, especially within a church setting, to lose track of God and become so focused on our worldly desires that we can become emotional about things. And there's a time and a place, as Solomon said, for emotion. There's a time and a place for grieving. There's a time and a place for everything under heaven. But when we come to studying the Word of God and looking at God's prophecy, it's very easy because we love the Lord. And it's very easy to become emotional about that because we just want to focus on that. But, there's good and there's bad with God. And we're going to see that in this prophecy. We're going to see the contrast between unrighteousness and righteousness. The title they've given this chapter is A King Will Reign in Righteousness. And you see that throughout the history of Judah. Of course, Israel to begin with David and Solomon, but then after Solomon and the split kingdom, you see this kind of up and down. You see the righteous kings, you see the unrighteous kings, and the constant struggle, the going back and forth between personal desires and godly desires, where people seek to actually do the will of the Lord and actually serve and obey the Lord. But as I said, God is the constant. He's not a variable, he's a constant. He stays the same through the whole entire process. And so when we sin and when we fall short of the glory of God, when Israel as a nation falls short of the glory of God, God himself never changes. He's faithful to his promises. He's gracious. He's merciful, long-suffering. And so when he says he's going to bless us, he means it. Now, we're free to do whatever we do in between all that. And that's not always a good thing for us because we choose to do things that are incorrect and sinful. But God himself never changes. And like I said, we'll see that in this chapter. He gives a warning to, when you get to verse 9, there's a warning to complacent women, warned of disaster, right? And I'll explain that more. It's not always the woman's fault, as people like to sit there and point a finger at Eve and say, it's all her. No, it's not always the women's fault. Yes, Eve was deceived, but she still made a choice, just like Adam did. But as somebody pointed out, following the leader, wow. Well, I think it was the Babylon Bee that pointed out that pretty much all men are going to do whatever a naked woman tells them to do because we're sinful. Yeah. So, wow. Anyways, we're going to see the glory of God and how he's better than we are in all circumstances as we look at Isaiah chapter 32. And I'm going to start reading the Bible before we have anything else. Oh, goodness. All right, so Isaiah chapter 32, starting in verse 1. Behold, a king will reign in righteousness, and princes will rule in justice. Each will be like a hiding place from the wind, a shelter from the storm, like streams of water in a dry place, like the shade of a great rock in a weary land. Then the eyes of those who see will not be closed, and the ears of those who hear will give attention. The heart of the hasty will understand and know, and the tongue of the stammerers or stutterers will hasten to speak distinctly. The fool will no more be called noble, nor the scoundrel said to be honorable. For the fool speaks folly, and his heart is busy with iniquity. To practice ungodliness, to utter error concerning the Lord, to leave the craving of the hungry unsatisfied, and to deprive the thirsty of drink. As for the scoundrel, his devices are evil, his plans wicked, schemes to ruin the poor with lying words, even when the plea of the needy is right. But he who is noble plans noble things, and on noble things he stands. Verse 9, rise up, you women who are at ease. Hear my voice, you complacent daughters. Give ear to my speech. In little more than a year you will shudder, you complacent women, for the grape harvest fails, the fruit harvest will not come. Tremble, you women who are at ease. Shudder, you complacent ones. Strip and make yourselves bare, and tie sackcloth around your waist. Beat your breasts for the pleasant fields, for the fruitful vine. For the soul of my people growing up in thorns and briars, yes, for all the joyous houses in the exultant city. For the palace is forsaken, the populous city deserted. The hill and the watchtower will become dens forever, a joy of wild donkeys, a pasture of flocks, until the Spirit is poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness becomes a fruitful field, and the fruitful field is deemed a forest. Then justice will dwell in the wilderness, and righteousness abide in the fruitful field. And the effect of righteousness will be peace, and the result of righteousness, quietness and trust forever. My people will abide in a peaceful habitation, in secure dwellings and in quiet resting places. And it will hail when the forest falls down, and the city will be utterly laid low. Happy are you who sow beside all waters, who let the feet of the ox and the donkey range free. Oof, there's a lot to unpack there. Dear Heavenly Father, we just come to you today, dear Lord, again with thanks in our hearts for your plan, for your will, for your divine order, dear Lord, for your purpose. We don't always understand, dear Lord. One day we shall, and one day we'll stop asking and wondering, because we will know of your goodness, dear Lord, and how all things worked together for your good and for the furtherment of your kingdom. We just ask that you would be with us today, dear Lord, as we dig into your word here and we learn that we can rely on you and trust you, dear Lord, that we can see that you know things and you know all things and you know the best things, dear Lord, that are for us and for our benefit, such as trusting in you. And we just ask that you would again be with Brother Adam and his family, dear Lord, be with Reno Baptist, be with the Etheridges, just all those, dear Lord, my mother and everyone out there who are dealing in illness and pain and loss and sorrow. Provide your peace, dear Lord, that we would all be able to be sober-minded and further your kingdom through all this, that your will, that your light would shine, that your will be done. Having microphone problems. Just realized I don't know how much of that there's no sound. Okay, so now that we have sound again, but there's peace when you trust in God, when you put your faith and your trust in him, and when you rely on him to deal with your enemies, as God told Israelites and Judah specifically here. The Israelites have already been conquered. They've already abandoned God to false gods. So Judah's down there, and Isaiah's telling Judah, trust God, have faith in God. And when we do those things, all right, there's going to be peace, and it's a gentle breeze. It's a breeze as opposed to the wind. If you've ever been in a windstorm, they're not fun, especially if you're around sand. There's no fun in being sandblasted from gusts of wind. There's no fun being out on the open water in a windstorm. Seas get rough. It's not enjoyable at all. Been there, done that. But not just do you have peace, but then you have the ability to have understanding around you, right? Verse 3, then the eyes of those who see will not be closed, and the ears of those who hear will give attention. We get prophecy from God in places where he talks about how, the blind will be blind, people will be blind, they won't be able to see, and people won't be able to hear, and they're not going to understand what they're hearing. But if you put your faith and your trust in God, then your eyes will be open, then your ears will be able to hear and see what God is saying and what God is doing. That is for your blessing as opposed to anything else. And I love this, verse 5, the fool will no more be called noble, for the scoundrel is said to be honorable, nor the scoundrel is said to be honorable. Right now, everything's been flipped, right? People are calling good evil and evil good. They're ignoring good things and they're highlighting the evil things, and they're ignoring evil things to certain people while they're highlighting, other types of evil for other people. And it's just very uneven. And it's not a good time because you have that double-mindedness. You have people that are trusting in Satan rather than God. But if you put your faith and your trust in God, and when the King of Righteousness sits on his throne, you're not going to have that conflict. It's if you turn on CNN or Fox News or anybody, any news source, and I've heard this directly from people in the media, especially when I used to listen to a lot of talk radio, if it bleeds, it leads. So you're going to hear doom and gloom way more than you're going to hear the good things. And you're not going to hear about God unless a pastor screws up or a member of a church has committed a crime. So it's very unbalanced. It's very uneven. And even these so-called best news sources, if all they do is post good things, then nobody clicks on their links, right? People don't want to. It's appealing to our sinful nature and our sinful side to see what happened. What does it look like over here where the terrorists attack, or what does it look like over here where there's domestic violence? And then on top of that, you don't know if the headline is correct or if it's even true. There's a headline floating around right now about a young woman who died of sepsis because she wasn't allowed to have an abortion. And that's a complete and utter lie of the situation. She didn't want an abortion to begin with. She went in, they could identify signs of sepsis, but they discharged her anyways. And they sent her home so that she and her unborn child both died. But according to the news, it was conservatives' fault that she wasn't allowed to have an abortion, and that was the reason why she died of sepsis. I mean, that's just, the headlines are misleading. Even when you get into reading the article, it's not real good. And so, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. And abortion wouldn't have helped either one of those individuals in that situation. But if you listen to the world, that was a solution to a problem that had nothing to do with the child. So we have to be careful, and we have to be, that stuff's not going to exist during the millennial reign of Christ when the King of Righteousness sits upon his throne. And there is some immediateness of this prophecy that deals with Israel. It's not quite time for their disbursement, and it's not quite time for the Babylonians to come in and take over. And God is going to deliver Judah from Assyria. He's said so. He's gonna, when we get, like I said last week, when we get up to chapter 37 here in Isaiah, God sends an angel down and kills 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in one night. So God's going to take care of you. God's going to take care of Judah. He told him that. And then he showed him, right? And then and Isaiah's sitting here telling them, God's going to do this. God's going to take care of you. And but a lot of this prophecy does point to a time in the future. There are all of the good kings of Judah have some aspect of them that is a type of Christ. Now, some more than others. David for sure, Solomon. There are types of Christ throughout the Old Testament. If you put all of the heroes of the Old Testament together in their best moments, you have Christ. Christ is, which he existed before all of them anyways, but Christ himself, the person of Christ, is full righteousness and, just full of the best of everybody all at one time for eternity. That's Christ. And so this prophecy, the first half of it here up to verse 8, talks about when he's sitting on the throne. There is some part of that is, whoever's the king when Assyria is defeated is going to be able to go, oh, hey, look, wow, we really can't trust God. Let's do it for a little while, let's do it for some time. But again, when we read Kings and Chronicles, we know that eventually Judah does fall. But until that time, what do? You trust in God. And that's, if you have a breath and you have a moment, put your trust and your faith in God. Yes, things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen, but it's far better and easier if you put your faith and your trust in God. And going on from verse 9, now this is again, the complacent women warned of disaster. There are places in the Bible, not a whole lot of them, but there's a few places where women make bad decisions. There's far more men making bad decisions than there are women in the Bible. But what I want to actually focus on is when you look at Sarah, or Sarai before her name was changed. She doesn't have the patience to wait on God for the blessing of Isaac. So she decides to give her servant to Abram, and that's where you get Ishmael from. But that causes strife, that causes conflict. Because she got complacent and didn't wait for God to fulfill his promises. You see that with Isaac's wives, you see that with Jacob's wives. There's anywhere there's men having multiple wives, there's a lot of problems. They don't get along with each other. They have all kinds of problems. They do all this political wrangling in the back of the tents and the behind the scenes kind of thing. And that's, again, there's plenty of godly women. There's plenty of examples of women who do good things in the Bible. But a complacent woman can be a problem for her husband. And they can be a problem for all of Israel. And when you look at, especially Judah down here, and now it says, rise up, verse 9, rise up, you women who are at ease, hear my voice, you complacent daughters, give ear to my speech. So the idea being they're kind of sitting around, they're not quite sure what's going to happen, and they're going to take it upon themselves to maybe do something about it. And that's not the best thing. They're given warning because they need to just, hey, chill out and listen to the prophet and hear what God has to say. Right? It's right here in verse 10, in little more than a year you will shudder, you complacent women, for the grape harvest fails, the fruit harvest will not come. Women are nurturing, women are caring, women are running the household, and if there's no food coming in, if there's no security, in this day and age it would be if there's limited money coming in, whatever, it's Very easy for that woman to sit there and go, well, I need to do something about it because whatever the man's doing is not enough or whatever. Now, maybe the husband and the wife get together and actually have a plan and talk about things. But when the wife or when the woman in the house decides that she's going to do something and she doesn't consult with anybody, especially when she's been sitting around, it's not a good thing. And again, that's not to say that women shouldn't, but they need to get together with their husbands. The woman of the house and the man of the house need to get together and be on the same page and deal with that and make sure it's a godly thing. Like I said, when you deal with, when you have Sarah and the different wives of the beginnings of Israel there, when they make decisions to do things on their own accord, there's a lot of conflict. It doesn't come out well all the time. And so in not just that, but them being complacent, it's if you're, and this is for anybody, period, man or woman, but if you're in a complacent place where you're not really concerned about God and his judgment, one direction or the other, that's not a good place to be in. And so when you go decide to do things, they're not going to be done out of humility. They're not going to be done out of the blessing of God or for the blessing of God. They're going to be done for your own personal interests. And Isaiah is telling these women, God is telling these women through Isaiah, verse 11, tremble you women who are at ease, shudder you complacent ones, strip and make yourselves bare, tie sackcloth around your waist, beat your breasts for the pleasant fields, for the fruitful vine. So in other words, humble yourself. It's not telling women to go run around naked. That's not what it's saying here. But to take off all the fine garments and put on the sackcloth, that's one of the things that if you saw a priest in sackcloth or a prophet walking around in sackcloth, which is itchy and just dirty and it's not a fun thing to wear. If you see somebody walking around in sackcloth, that's a priest of some kind, or it even doesn't have to even be a priest, but generally that's who you would see as the priests and the prophets, especially if they put ashes on their head. There's a problem. They're facing troubles. And it's a way of humiliating themselves to the point where it's getting people's attention. You know, you humble yourself to bring attention to the fact that people need to get right with God. That's the whole point of that. And so these complacent women need to get right with God, put their faith and their trust in God, and not try to do things in the background and try and manipulate the situation. But there will come a time when the palace is deserted, when the palace is nothing, nobody lives there. It's not kept. There's weeds growing through everything. There's wild animals wandering around through it, doing all kinds of unfortunate things inside there. But then you get down to verse 15, until the Spirit is poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness becomes a fruitful field, and the fruitful field is deemed a forest. So what's going to bring about the Spirit being poured down? Humble and contrite hearts. People who have stopped being complacent, started working for the Lord, serving the Lord, humbling themselves, and allowing God to do what God is going to do. In spite of them, in spite of us. And that's when we humble ourselves, when we have enough humility to say, God, yes, I am a sinner. And God, yes, I need your help to get to heaven. I need your help to not be a sinner anymore, which is a very long process, by the way. But when we humble ourselves, what does God do? He saves us, and what does he do? He pours his Spirit down. It's what happened at the day of Pentecost. It's what happens today when you get saved. Back during the Old Testament times, the Spirit would come down on certain individuals for certain occasions, for certain reasons. You see that mostly with the judges, but then the king of Israel, or in this case, Judah, would be blessed with the Spirit of God and would hopefully be able to attune themselves, listen, and let the Spirit guide and lead. And when you see those times throughout Kings and Chronicles where that king of Judah, specifically, because none of the kings of the northern kingdom really ever did right by God, but when they allow the Spirit to lead them, the whole entire kingdom prospers. When we allow God to lead us, when we allow the Spirit to lead us, and it's not that we're going to be super rich or that we're going to be super healthy or that we're going to be, whatever, but we're able to handle and weather the storms better. And if we do things in a godly fashion, we're able to bless others while we ourselves are blessed. And there's just a whole lot of things that get to be easier. It's not that there's no trouble, but when the Spirit is poured out upon us and we respond in kind and we allow it to work, we're going to be blessed. And when the people of Israel, the people of Judah, allow the Spirit to work, they're going to be blessed. Which means what? In order to allow the Spirit to work, what do? You got to trust it. You have to let it work. And again, those complacent women in the background are trying to manipulate things. But if you let the Spirit do it, and you let the Spirit handle your business like that, the outcome is far better, longer lasting, and it's a lot easier. So verse 16, then justice will dwell in the wilderness and righteousness abide in the fruitful field, and the effect of righteousness will be peace, and the result of righteousness, quietness and trust forever. My people will abide in a peaceful habitation, in secure dwellings, and in quiet resting places. This is even after the millennial reign. Because you still have mankind. We're still sinful. Granted, Jesus will be on the throne. Things will be a lot better. Nations won't be at war and that kind of thing. But, you get to the end of the millennial reign. Satan's released one more time for a final battle. But what's interesting is at the end of the millennial reign, Satan's been bound up for 1,000 years. Mankind still sins. And part of the point of the millennial reign is to show mankind that you don't have to have Satan to sin. You can sin all on your own without that influence from Satan. But once all that is finally said and done, when the final battle is complete and New Jerusalem comes down out of the clouds, we will have a place to live that is so secure that nothing will get in there but the righteousness and love of God and those who trust in Him. And so that's God's message here. Put your faith and trust in me so that when it's all said and done, you will be blessed. He's telling Judah, trust in me so that you will be blessed. Again, it's so easy for us to look out at things right now. We don't know exactly what's going on with Iran. We don't know exactly, Trump's talking all these major peace deals. Every time he turns around and says Iran's coming to the table, somebody does something stupid and screws it up. We don't know. But that's man, and I love Trump, but, let's do this through God, not through man, so that it's long lasting. We haven't gotten to the tribulation yet. We haven't gotten to the part where the earth is in such conflict that, that Christ has to come. We're not there yet. So it's so easy for us right now when we look at fuel prices, when we look at our financial situations, when we look at everything that's going on, the conflict that's out there, potential conflict versus, potential peace. And, will it be the false peace that we're promised? Again, based on how I understand things to happen in the book of Revelation, it's the rapture that kicks off the tribulation, which brings in the one world government, which brings in the one world economy and the one world religion. And that's 3.5 years of false peace before you have 3.5 years of all-out war. And then Christ returns for the Battle of Armageddon. And, we haven't hit that point yet. I'm still here. As far as I know, I'm a Christian. We're all still here, so we're not there yet. So we need to put our faith and our trust in God so that we vote for the right people, so that we do the right things out in our communities, that we witness when we're supposed to, that we recognize the opportunities for ministry. Put our faith and trust in God so that he will pour the Spirit upon us and we can go out and be his hands and his feet here on earth and affect as much change as possible. We can't save everybody, but we can start with one. So if we're putting our faith and our trust in God, knowing that the future outcome is that a king is going to sit on the throne for an eternity, and that we get to be a part of that, then we're doing the right thing. And we're going to have trouble, and we're going to have tribulations, and we're going to sit there and scratch your head, God, why'd you allow that to happen? But just like David through the Psalms, God, what's going on here? I got all these people attacking me. But I know that you are faithful and that you are going to deliver me. And so as we move forward, as things begin to get worse, as the persecution increases against Christianity and the Jews, as we move forward towards the end of the end times, our best bet is to put our faith and our trust in God. Because you can't see, you don't know what's right around the corner. You really don't. You kind of have some idea if you pay enough attention. If you read your Bible, things are going to get far worse before they get better. But when God sits there and tells his people, trust me, I've got this under control, I'm going to take care of it, we need to stop and listen. And we need to put our faith in that, and we need to listen to the constant thing in our universe. You get a little nerdy here, but you get into the laws of thermodynamics, right? And the second law being the law of entropy. Everything's supposed to die, and I don't like this term, but everything's going to die of heat death, right? So the universe, which at the fall of man was really when all this started, when entropy really started because of sin being introduced into the world. But the whole entire universe, all the evidence in the universe is that it's dying. Now, it'll do things on God's timing, but we know that everything is going to move in that direction. But if we put our faith and our trust in God, it makes it so much easier to deal with that. And when it does come time for us to have our homegoings, for our time in this plane, our time in this realm to be over, to end, when it's our time to ascend, not only do we have that peace, but everyone around us has that peace and can deal with it because we've put our faith and our trust in God. Doesn't mean we have to understand it, may not even like it a whole lot, but knowing that God has a better plan, if we will put our faith and our trust in him, makes things so much easier. And that's where Judah's at. That's where King Hezekiah's at. Isaiah's sitting there going, don't trust anybody but God. If you trust God, things are going to go better. And things are going to go easier. And it's going to be, you'll get your rewards. You'll get what you want. That is a peaceful kingdom, a successful kingdom, a righteous kingdom. You get those things if you trust in God. May not seem like it right now, but if we put our faith and our trust in God, we get... This is 2,700 years ago, looking at when Hezekiah was around and when Isaiah was around. For us, the promise is not in the nation of Israel, it's in the Messiah and ultimately in heaven. And so our peace, our time in righteousness will be eternally in heaven with Christ. And that's where we need to be, and that's where we need to encourage others to be. But it'll be far greater than anything you could ever imagine here on earth. So I do hope and pray that you have trusted in the Lord, that He is your Savior, and that your faith is in Him, not in man, but in Him and His eternity. If not, I certainly pray for you. Shoot me a message. Come down here to the church in person. Say, Pastor, I need to talk. But I do hope and pray that you have put your trust in the Lord.